Welcome to the Fairfax County Board of Building and Fire Code Appeals hearing. Today is Wednesday, February 10, 2021. My name is Richard Grace, the liaison to this board and your moderator for today. I'd like to go over a few guidelines for the hearing before I turn this over to our chairman, Mr. Dave Conover. First, this hearing is being recorded and the recording will be made available to all on our website after the hearing. Please keep yourself muted during the hearing in order to keep background noise at a minimum. If there's any dial-in users, you can mute and unmute by using *6. Please identify yourself by first and last name each time you speak. This is important to maintain an accurate audio record of this hearing. Should you have any difficulty during the hearing, please feel free to give me a call. My phone number is 571-286-8283. I will repeat that, 571-286-8283, and I will attempt to assist in any problems you might be having. Are there any questions before we begin the hearing?
Richard, one question on that. That's normally the one we read for audio, but because this is audio and video, do you still want us announcing ourselves before we talk, even though we can see each other?
I'm going to say yes, because I don't know that it's recording the video portion of it.
Okay.
Okay. So for the audio portion, if it's only recording audio, then we want to be able to identify ourselves each time. But good question, Mike. Thank you. Are there any other questions? I will now turn this over to the chairman of the Fairfax County Board of Building and Fire Code Appeals, Mr. Conover. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Richard, and all the other staff of Land Development Services at the county for your efforts in setting up this meeting. For the record, it is 10:11 a.m. on Wednesday, February 10th, 2021. I'd like to open the February meeting of the Fairfax County Board of Building and Fire Code Appeals, or the board, at which we will conduct a hearing on an appeal scheduled to be heard at this meeting. To conduct this meeting and hearing wholly electronically and to effectuate both the emergency procedures authorized by FOIA and the emergency ordinance, the board needs to make certain findings and determinations for the record to address appeals that have been filed with the building, property maintenance, or fire official in a timely manner. Conducting this hearing wholly electronically will be a bit challenging, so I ask you in advance for your patience. Because each member of the board is participating in this meeting from a separate location, we have to verify that a quorum of members is participating and that each member's voice is clear, audible, and an appropriate volume for all other members to hear. Accordingly, I'm going to conduct a roll call and ask each board member participating to state their name and the location from which they're participating. In doing that, I'd ask each board member to pay close attention to ensure that you can hear each of your colleagues. Following this roll call, we'll vote to establish that every member can hear every other member. So I'll take the roll call. George Page, are you here? George?
You're on mute, George.
Okay. Darren Shoemate.
Darren Shoemate's here.
Thank you. Rob Fisher.
Rob Fisher's here, calling in from my office in Vienna.
Thank you, Rob. George, you're in McLean, correct?
No, this is George Page. I'm sorry, I was muted. I'm in my house in Herndon, Virginia.
Herndon, okay. And Darren, where are you located?
I'm in Alexandria and Mason District.
Okay. Rob Fisher, Mike Grinnell?
Mike Grinnell in Springfield is here.
Amado Fernandez.
Amado Fernandez, Chantilly, Virginia is here.
Okay, and Dave Conover, Great Falls. At this point, I'm passing the role of chairman to Vice Chairman Darren Shoemate so that I may be heard to make an appropriate motion. I move that each member's voice, board member's voice, can be adequately heard by each other member of the board, and I ask for a second of the motion, and then we'll vote on the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Mike Grinnell.
Okay. All those in favor? George,
Yes, I'm in favor.
Darren,
Yes.
Rob,
Aye.
Mike,
Yes.
Amato,
Yes.
Dave votes yes. Okay. Having established that each member's voice may be heard by every other member, we must next establish the nature of the emergency that compels these emergency procedures. The fact that we're meeting electronically, what type of electronic communication is being used, and how we have arranged for public access, including appellants and appellees on our agenda to this meeting. At this point, again, I'm going to pass the role of chairman over to Darren Shoemate, the vice chairman, so that I can make an appropriate motion. I move that the state of emergency passed by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for the board to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting, and that as such, FOIA's usual procedures, which require the physical assembly of the board and the physical presence of the public and appellants and appellees, cannot be implemented safely or practically. I further move that the board may conduct this meeting electronically through a dedicated audio-video conferencing line, and the public may access this meeting by calling 571-429-5982 and entering access code 213-107-319 #. I ask for a second of the motion, and then we'll vote on the motion. Is there a second?
Second
Mike
that.
Grinnell.
Thank you. George?
Yes.
We're going to vote. George votes yes. Darren?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes, sir.
Mike Grinnell?
Yes.
Amato?
Yes.
Okay. Dave as well votes yes. It is next required that all of the matters addressed on today's agenda must address the emergency itself, are necessary for continuity in Fairfax County government, and or are statutorily required or necessary to continue operations and the discharge of the board's lawful purposes, duties, and responsibility. Again, I'm going to pass the role of chairman on to Darren so I can make an appropriate motion. I move that the matters addressed on today's agenda must address the emergency itself, are necessary for continuity in Fairfax County government, and are statutorily required or necessary to continue operations and the discharge of the board's lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. Is there a second to this motion?
Second, Mike Grinnell.
Okay. George, how do you vote?
Yes.
Darren?
That's a yes.
Rob Fisher?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Mike?
Yes.
Amato?
Yes.
Okay, and Dave votes yes. Okay, so we have one appeal to hear today. I would note we have copies of all correspondence and supporting documentation on the appeal. Thanks to county staff and Carla for making that available. I would ask that if there are other members of the public in attendance that have not made themselves known, to do so now. Is there anybody on the line other than the board members, the county staff, and Mr. Salinas? Please make yourself known now.
This is Laura Avis. I'm the homeowner in Reston, Virginia.
Thank you. And I want to make sure you can hear us and our audio is clear for
Yes.
you? Okay, thank you. Okay, good morning. So for the appeal, both the appellant and the appellee can appeal a decision to the State Board of Technical Review, the board, our board, to the State Technical Review Board. The application for appeal must be submitted to the State Technical Review Board within 21 days following the receipt of the board's decision on the appeal. That receipt should occur today with our vote, and I follow that up with a form that I'll use to record the vote and the resolution on this appeal today with Carla. Please note that a majority vote of the board is needed to overturn the building official's ruling. A tie vote goes in favor of the board, and as chairman, I will only vote to break a tie. The order of the meeting with respect to the appeal we will hear today is as follows. I'm going to ask the appellant to present no more than a 2-minute summary of the basis for their appeal of the county position. I'll call this an opening statement. It's a 2-minute or less, just opening summary of the issue. Then I'm going to ask the county the same thing. Give them an opportunity to present a 2-minute or less summary of the basis for their position with respect to this issue. Then, as chairman, to help focus the hearing, I will frame the issue or summarize it before the board and make sure that everybody is clear as to what we're focusing on during the hearing today. Then I'll ask the appellant to speak and present their case to the board. The time that you need to present your case, and the board will have opportunity to ask questions of the appellant at that time. That's how we opened the hearing last time. So the summary statements and my summarization of the or focus of the issue is something new we're going to do with this hearing. After the appellant speaks and makes their presentation of their information or data, and we ask questions, the county will speak and present its case in total to the board, and the board will have an opportunity to ask questions. Then the appellant can provide additional information in response to prior testimony, as was done last time, followed by the county staff if they choose to provide additional information. At that time, before I close the hearing and the board gets a motion and deliberates, if either party, the appellant or appellee, has any questions for the other party, they can direct them through the chair to the other party. After each time the appellant or county speaks, I'll provide board members the opportunity to ask questions, and the appellant or the county has appropriate time to respond. Having completed opening summaries and 2 rounds of testimony and questions, I'll close the public hearing phase of the meeting and ask for a motion and second from board members as to the disposition of the appeal. Everybody should know when we're done with the 2 rounds of testimony and questions. So before I close the public hearing phase, make sure if you have any questions or information to get it out before that point in time. With the motion before the board on an appeal, we'll discuss the motion and vote. If the board discussion opens up a new issue that was not discussed during the hearing, I'm going to feel compelled to reopen the hearing for the appellant and the county to speak on that particular issue that came up in the board's deliberations on a motion associated with the appeal. So I'd ask that when you're not speaking, put your phone on mute. As county staff has already indicated, if there's background noise or other sound that's making the meeting a challenge, we'll mute everybody, and then you'll have to dial *6. I think that will be, or unmute your line. When you'd like to speak, please indicate by saying request to speak, and let me recognize you. I don't think that's going to be a problem, but if it starts to become one, we'll figure out how to deal with it at the time. I would now invite those on the call participating as or on behalf of the appellant to introduce themselves and state their affiliation. So I'll ask folks from the county, since we know that Mr. Salinas is here, and Laura, it's Avis, correct? Is here, okay, and the board members. So I'll ask the county staff to introduce themselves.
Good morning. My name is James Canner. I'm the branch chief of Building Inspections Division.
Thank you. Paul?
Sorry, microphone was off. Paul Emmerich, County Attorney's Office.
Thank you. Richard?
Richard Graves here with Building Code Research and Development.
Carla?
Carla Guerra Moran, Secretary of the Board of Building Code Appeals.
Okay, and is Dan Wilhelm?
And Dan Wilhelm, Deputy Building Official, Fairfax County.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, so if there's anybody else on the call, now's the time to introduce yourself. I think we've gotten guests, we've gotten the appellant and the appellees from the county and the board. So I'm going to invite the appellant to make a no more than 2-minute opening statement that gets to the core of your appeal. Please,
All right,
Mr. Salinas.
Thank you very much. Ricky Salinas here with Freedom Plumbers out of Manassas, Virginia. Good morning, Mrs. Avis, and good morning to the members of this board and to the Fairfax County Land Development Services staff, or LDS. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today and for allowing me, a private contractor working on behalf of a Fairfax County resident, to present our position on the appeal of the video reviewer's decision about the current conditions of the lateral liner installed in 1757 Wainwright Drive. In short, this liner was installed over a year ago today, following the code modification procedure process and the video submission review process, which is the part of the entire process that I disagree on. The liner's been in the sewer for well over a year with no issues with backups and no incidents whatsoever for the homeowner. It is my position that the continued failures of my inspections with Fairfax County lead me to believe that they do have some disregard to the VRC code as intent as written, as well as a lack of an all-around understanding of small pipe diameter CIPP lateral lining, that being cured in place pipe lateral lining. I've tried to explain to the county on how it works unsuccessfully. And furthermore, we're at this point now where I can't continue servicing my liner without compromising its integrity, its structure, its warranty, and its longevity. And I wish to present my case based on those parameters. That concludes my opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Salinas. Who will be representing the county? Is it Mr. Grace?
No, that's incorrect. It's going to be Mr. Cantor.
Okay. James Cantor, go ahead. The floor is yours for 2 minutes or less to present a summary of the county's position.
Thank you, Chairman. This is James Cantor. Good morning, everybody, and I'll try to surmise in 2 minutes or less. Forgive me. The Fairfax County Building Official and his representatives respectfully ask the Fairfax County Building and Fire Code Appeals to uphold the decision regarding the inspection comments made after the reviewing the post-installation video camera surveys from the installation of cure-in-place pipe lateral lining system at the subject property, 1757 Wainwright Drive. The VRC sections P3002.2 and P3002.3 require all piping materials and fittings respectively to comply with the standards listed in the tables in the code. These code sections and standards require piping materials and fittings to have smooth interior surface so as not to impede gravity flow. The code modification approval issued to the appellant for subject address was based in part on the condition of CIPP lining system to provide a smooth interior surface. The pictures included in the position statement do not show a smooth interior, but rather a rough surface material with surfaces that don't impede the gravity flow. And of course, the videos have been provided. In addition, there's additional documentation that's been provided that does not pertain to the product that the appellant indicated that they were going to be installing. These are more current documents that have been supplied, so I'm not sure that they will apply to this installation. And at this time, that's our point, is that the interior of these pipes are not of smooth surface to prevent impeding the flow of the sewage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cantor. So to summarize, before we give both the appellant and the county opportunity to present more detail, in summary, I'm looking at this and what you're saying is, and correct me if I'm wrong, the code has certain requirements regarding the interior surface of the piping, and the county, through final inspection, believes that the current in situ piping installation does not meet those requirements at certain locations in the installation. And the appellant disagrees with that view by the county inspection as to the acceptability of the piping as installed. Mr. Salinas, does that really summarize the focus of this? And as I said in the opening statements, what I'm trying to do with this is get us focused on what the core issues are so we don't get off on a tangent. Mr. Salinas, does that pretty much summarize the issue at hand?
Yes, the issue at hand, in my understanding, is the aesthetic perfection required by the county versus the performance delivered by the product installed.
Thank you. Mr. Cantor, did my summary pretty much get at the focal area and core of the issue?
Yes, sir. We're concerned with the interior smoothness of this pipe.
Okay, fine. So with that, I think we're all hopefully on the same page. So now we'll proceed as we did in past hearings. I'm going to give the floor to the appellant to let them make any presentations, material, data, anything they have, noting that we have copies of all the videos and everything from the county. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Salinas. And then the board will ask the appellant questions, and we'll do the same thing with the county staff. So, Mr. Salinas, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Lateral lining, unlike brand new sewer installations or any couplings or PVC or cast iron or ABS, is a different type of material. And the required smoothness that the county is requesting as an aesthetic view of the pipe is not 100% possible with all types of material with lateral lining. Yes, there are product and manufacturers out there that provide smoother liners than others, but they are also thicker than others, furthermore reducing the inner diameter, which at one point in time was a massive controversy within Fairfax for utilizing the technology CIPP, was the reduction of the interior diameter. My technology, which is LMK Technologies, an innovator of small pipe diameter lateral lining, is a thinner yet very durable lateral liner. By being thinner, what we're really doing is coating and renewing the inside walls of the entire pipe, top, sides, and bottom. And by coating this pipe with a thin insert inside of an old pipe, we are replicating what the existing pipe has to offer. Any blemishes, any defects, after we've been removed them as much as we possibly can without compromising the structure of the hose pipe, it does in some way or form replicate itself within the final product. Some of these defects were bigger than others and were notated by the county in 5 separate video inspections. Mind you, each one of these inspections had a different result and a different problem to address. We submitted videos 5 separate times to the county, and 5 separate times there was a different issue. None of them discovered from the first video, all of them brought up on an escalating process, an endless procedure of inspections and failures and shifting of goalposts. That's neither here nor there. After going through all of these inspections, the lateral lining process became very clear to me that it is not fully understood by the inspection staff, which is why I submitted in my package a very basic baseline description of what lateral lining actually is, how it comes to be, and what happens when you excessively service these lateral liners, which are quite technically an accelerated use and abuse and wear and tear on a lateral liner that was not designed to take that kind of abuse, which does lead to manufacturers no longer accepting a warranty, eventual failure of liners, and then, of course, the rectification of those failures via conventional excavation in private and public property, which is extraordinarily costly depending on the location of the defect and is all costs that have to be bared by the homeowner and the homeowner alone. No assistance from the county for those repairs. So that is why I believe we should talk about lateral lining. Quick overview of how it works and why is it the inspection review staff is seeing what they are seeing. And hopefully it helps everybody understand what is it I'm trying to state to the inspection staff so we can get these liners, which have been working just fine for well over a year, to leave it in place and continue serving the homeowner. If you go to the package, which was submitted to us yesterday or the day before yesterday by Ms. Guerra Moran, the final page shows, I believe it's the final page, shows my presentation of lateral lining. And it's all with images, so it can help everybody understand how it's done. And it starts with the top image of buckets, and then right next to it, a felt tube lateral liner. Lateral liners are composed of 3 separate materials: resin in liquid form, resin activator in liquid form, and a woven or felt tube liner. You can also describe it as a sock per se, just for the simplicity of description. The resin and activator, well, first, after the cast iron pipe is thoroughly descaled, we go through the application of the liner. The resin and the activator in liquid form are mixed together to trigger the curing process. Once thoroughly mixed, they are then poured into the sock or liner, which can be seen on page 2. All excess resin is then removed, and then the impregnated liner is shot into the sewer line, where it is kept inflated like a balloon until the curing process hardens the resin into a solid state. And that is a simplified way of describing how the lining process works. Mind you, it's a lot more complicated when it comes to the installation of the same. I believe that if we have an understanding of how the liner is comprised, oh, I already went over that, sorry for that. Moving back to the liner, sorry. If you have a sponge-like sock, which is the tube, which you saw on page 1, specifically measured and cut to the length of the pipe being rehabilitated, and you soak this in this sponge-like sock in heavy honey-like liquid resin, once the same is installed and has cured, what will be left behind is a solid, round, small pipe diameter insert inside of an old pipe. You can compare this soft to hard process of resin-saturated woven felt tube liner to a wet cloth left out in the winter's night. Go back to it in the morning, and that cloth will be harder than a plank of wood. But it's not the cloth that's hard, it's the water within the cloth that's frozen that made the cloth hard. The same is applied to small diameter liner. It's not the liner, the woven felt tube, that is hard, it's the resin. But the cloth liner is still there. It will always be there. It is now part of this pipe. Why is that important? Because every time LDS places a new demand to continue sanding down a liner in order to comply with their demands for aesthetic perfection, they are actually demanding from us to thin out an already thin pipe insert by removing first a smooth rubber membrane, which was designed to be the slick new surface of the hose pipe, and then the resin that keeps the woven felt liner in place while compromising the structural integrity of that liner. Now, when I sand down these layers of resin and reach the woven felt part of this liner, it starts exposing and tearing away at the gauze-like material that constitutes the woven felt liner, and exposing those tears in the form of tiny little soft plastic bag-like chads that are not solid. These chads per se behave like seaweeds on the ocean floor. They move with the flow and do nothing to increase friction in the corridor, in the flow corridor of the pipe, which was already vastly improved by the installation of the liner. The last video and the photos befores and afters on this package show the liner after it was serviced multiple times by the sanding down process. We removed the bumps that were reported by the video reviewer on their second and third inspection failure. By doing so, we exposed these soft seaweed-like chads, which are acting like loose threads on a piece of fabric. When you pull at it, it just keeps on pulling more string. The same is with the felt or the liner. As mentioned before, the bumps are gone, which was the concern, the major concern with the video review and the original failures. And now this brings us to today. My hope is that this explanation on how a liner comes to be, how the material or what types of materials come together to make this new solid insert inside of an old pipe, understanding what the felt tube liner looks like pre-installation phase is literally like a sock or a cotton woven felt tube rolled up together. And it's kind of like a gauzy tube, which is designed to absorb resin. My hope is that all of this explanation helps everybody understand my position. The liner is working. It has been working since its original installation in January 16th of 2020. No backups or even the threat of a backup has occurred since even before the demands from the video reviewer to remove the bumps was established. This liner, which is a custom designed sewer renewal rehabilitation part, is serving its purpose, that being to safeguard my client's safety, health, and general welfare through an affordable and structurally strong technology, which has done nothing less but to maintain her home's continued sanitation by improving the functionality of the sewer which it serves and extend its operational life for the foreseeable future. I urge this board to overturn the decision made by the video reviewer and allow for this liner to stay as installed so it can continue serving my client, a Fairfax County resident, the same way it has been serving her since the first day it was installed more than a year ago. And that concludes this section.
Thank you, Mr. Salinas. I would ask, is there anybody, I'll say on your side of the table that would like to also speak?
This is Laura Avis, the homeowner. I just
Yes.
like to add, I just would like to kind of back up and say what necessitated me having this liner installed in the first place was I had two consecutive days where my sewer backed up into my utility room. I had a different plumber come out. They first snaked the drain, then they hydrojetted the drain and identified a small section of the pipe under the patio that had a problem. I got a second opinion from Freedom Plumbers, and they offered me two options. One, to dig up that small section of the pipe, and the second option was to reline the entire pipe. I chose the relining despite the fact that it was more expensive for me because I thought that it would prevent problems down the road. I'm in a house that was built in 1966. The cast iron pipe is over 50 years old, and there's a very large maple tree behind my house with roots. And I was concerned that if I just fixed one section of the pipe, that down the road I'd have to have another section dug up and another section. So, and since this pipe has been installed, I've had no problems. And in fact, some other problems I thought were unrelated to the sewer line, such as my washing machine always smelling, have gone away. So I've had basically no problems at all. And it was my intent when I had this work done that I would prevent tree root incursion in the pipe down the road. I'd prevent the pipe from disintegrating and I'd prevent water from seeping into the ground. So I just wanted to state why I chose to do this work.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to ask the board members if they have any questions. I'm going to just call on board members. George Page, do you have any questions for the appellant?
No, this is George. No, I don't have any questions for Mr. Salinas.
Okay. Darren Shoemate, questions?
No, not right now.
Okay. Rob Fisher, do you have any questions for the appellant?
Yes, just one from Mr. Salinas. Mr. Salinas, I heard you say that the product you're using is a thinner lining than some of the other pipe lining products. Is that right?
My material is thinner than other products such as permaliner. Yes.
Okay. And what made you choose the thinner liner?
The objection of Fairfax County back before code modification was actually in availability, in hopes to someday become a #1 competitor of lateral lining in Fairfax County. I wanted to prepare myself to be able to address any of the concerns and rumors that were in the market. Their biggest issue at the time was the reduction of inner diameter due to thick liners. So I figured, let's go ahead and get out there with a more advanced technology, thinner yet strong liner, in order to address that particular concern.
And as a follow-up question, would the thicker liner, does it use the same sort of sock that would have the potential for hanging chads, if you will?
Once you start sanding it down, yeah. So the sock, once inserted, if you imagine a straight sock going through a turn, once it makes that turn, there's going to be a little bit of folding on the inside of that turn, whether that turns to the right, left, or down. You're going to see a little bit of folding, or what some people call fins, on the inside of that turn. And that happens with most liners, unless you have the stretch type liner, which it does not leave fins on the inside, but the outer wall doesn't necessarily touch the pipe on that side. So they still haven't rectified those technologies, making this side of the pipe very liable for breaking if a sewer snake smashes it too hard. So we wanted liners that would hug the entire diameter of the inside of the sewer line in order to maintain structural integrity.
Okay, last question. What kind of warranty do you provide, Ms. Avis?
20-year parts, 20-year labor, which is what the manufacturer offers us. Not for the labor, I cover labor.
How many years?
2020.
Okay.
Okay. I do have one other question, but I'm not sure that now's the time. That's it for now.
Okay, thanks,
We'll have
Rob.
a second shot, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mike
Okay.
Grinnell, any questions?
Yes, good to see you again, Ricky. Quick question. I'm looking at, the county basically said this has to be installed per the manufacturer's recommendations. And the simple question is, was this installed per the manufacturer's recommendations? And specifically, I'm looking on page 30 of the packet we were sent, which breaks down the testing and the visual inspection requirements that goes into, there's a big deal about the bumps and some of the deformations. And it actually has an allowance of 10% of the pipe's diameter in there. And that's a roundabout way of saying, was this installed per the manufacturer's recommendations? And then the follow-up to that is, has the manufacturer weighed in at all on your installation?
Thank you for that. Yes, so the information package provided to the board does not specifically address my approach at inserting the lateral liner, which was installed to manufacturer specifications. That package provided was to help everybody understand that lining as a general technology has been built around the requirements in the plumbing code, that being UPC, IPC. Okay, so that's all there following the ASTMs. When it comes to my approach for lateral lining, which is an above ground access inversion system, and we utilize accesses like a clean out, a toilet, or an excavation site. Everything has followed protocols as per the installation requirements of the county, including pre-installation requirements of sanding down or descaling the cast iron sewer line. The manufacturer has seen the video and they have not opposed the video. They have not mentioned anything that looks wrong or defective according to their experience in the installations. And that would be my representative, Jason Matthey. And I do have a technical representative in Chicago, Illinois, by the name of Mike Reeves.
So by that, I would then assume the manufacturer has agreed to their portion of the warranty.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Now, of course, the key words, which are now were in my opening statement, were said to me. It may void the manufacturer warranty to continue sanding down this liner. We're past the bumps. Now we're at smoother surface with these Chad-like little pieces of little soft plastic, of little baggies standing upward. And those do not call a frictional issue when it comes to this flow operational corridor of the sewer.
And the final question, the package that we're looking at looks like it's from Easy Liner, and they have the 10% tolerance in their case for any wrinkles.
Yes.
Is that the same tolerance that is on your product, the L&K Technologies?
That's an industry standard, and I can get that for you if that's what you need. Yes.
That's fine. I'll confirm everything with the county when they go. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Amato, any questions at this time? You're on mute, Amato.
All right, there we go. Like I said, I just want to follow up on a question from Mike to Mr. Salinas. The evaluation that you discussed with Mike from the manufacturer, with the L&K technology manufacturer, do you have something? You have a letter in writing from them regarding their evaluation of what it looks like and whether they are still they still stand behind their scope of their work relative to the warranty?
My apologies. No, I do not have a written letter. These were all conversations over the phone after I expressed to them my issues with multiple liners in the county of Fairfax.
Okay. All right. That was all for now.
Okay, thank you, Amato. Okay, I have no questions. So at this point, I'm going to turn the floor over to James Canner and any others from the county that or others that are going to make the presentation on behalf of the county.
This is James Canner. Thank you. I'll get directly to the point. Code modification is an approval process to allow a product that is not currently allowed by the code to be permitted to be used, such as cure-in-place piping. That being said, the product should be comparable to today's codes and standards that are approved. And then if I reference over to plumbing or International Residential Code, plumbing section 3002.3.1, it clearly states a drainage finish shall not have ledges, shoulders, or reductions that can retard or obstruct drainage flow from the piping. So that is where we come to be concerned about the interior surfaces of these pipes. It was mentioned that the fuzzies, if you will, won't restrict or cause friction in a pipe. The interior diameter of a pipe itself causes friction, and anything that obstructs into that opening will further restrict flow. And I would assume that over time, as the sewage flows through the pipe, there will be little bits and pieces that grab a hold of those little fuzzies and begin to build up at a much faster rate than if this were a smooth interior pipe, such as ABS plastic, even the smooth interior of a concrete or cast steel. That is a concern we have. The documents that Mr. Salinas has provided show 2 photographs in there of a descaled pipe and also a piece of a pipe that have the liner installed, both of which are prime examples and probably best case scenario examples, but that is similar to what we're looking for when these products are installed. I have a product sample in our office that is the same resemblance of the cure-in-place photograph that you see in that document, and it's a smooth interior, and if I were to use an example, I would call it a plastic-like interior finish of that pipe. That is not what we have in this case with this installed liner. It was mentioned about the 10% wrinklage being an industry standard. If you go back through the photographs and videos, you will see that there are clearly areas of this pipe that had much more than 10% of wrinklage. I'm sorry. There was a mention or a question about the manufacturer installation instructions. If you look in there, there is required to be a certification provided to the homeowner of an NASSCO LACP, which is a lateral assessment and certification program. And I'm not aware, nor have I asked up to this point, but I think it would be prudent to ask for that certification now, because that would be an independent third-party certification that would verify that this liner was installed appropriately. We have not seen a copy of that, but the manufacturer does say it should be provided to the owner, not the county. Mr. Salinas mentioned that there's been escalating requests of remediation or fixes, if you will, and that is primarily due to the quality of the videos that we receive. If we get a video that's very clear and slow and we can take our time and look at it and make sure that we're seeing everything we need to see, it's very easy to identify all the items at one viewing. If we get a video that's too rapid, too dark, or just a poor pixelation or quality, it's very difficult to identify those areas. So in subsequent videos, we had a better quality video. We were able to see more concerns, and that's why the escalation and request was happening. Speaking to the manufacturer, I know myself and Mr. Grace have both reached out to the manufacturer. I had a phone call with the representative. I asked for manufacturing installation information or any other documentation or training videos, et cetera, that they may have for this product, and I've never received a response. And to my knowledge, neither has Mr. Grace from this manufacturer. So we've reached out to them to try to get additional information, and I haven't received it. So at this point, our position is that we are looking for a smooth interior diameter of a pipe that's not going to cause problems down the road for the homeowner, or I should say the property, because homeowners move and sell their properties. There's a mention of a warranty, but warranties are only good so long as the company is in business. Should the company go out of business, the homeowner or the property will be subjected to whatever happens to this down the road. So we really have to fall back to and rely on the letter and the intent of the code when we're making these decisions, and that's why we've arrived at the decision we have on this pipe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cantor. Is there anybody else from the county that would like to speak at this time? Okay, I'm going to ask George, do you have any questions for the county? George?
Yeah, I have a couple questions for Mr. Cantor. And first of all, the pipes that you referred to in the last couple of pictures, those are ideal conditions, right? Those are laboratory conditions, right?
I would assume they probably are.
Yeah. They look, well, they must be laboratory. They're not in the ground. They're sitting on somebody's bench.
I don't disagree with that. But
okay. So those is the county is that the standard for the county?
We don't expect it to be that pristine. I've never seen a descaled pipe that is anywhere near what that photograph shows, although we do see them quite well descaled and cleaned. Typically speaking, the interior of the liners are a little bit more coarse. We usually will see a little bit of something in the bends or turns, but generally speaking, a well installed liner will look pretty similar to what that photograph shows.
Okay. The second question is, I think the last time we discussed this technique, the smoothness of the interior seemed to me to be more of a subjective thing by the county. You mentioned 10%. Is that your metric?
No, the 10% is I'm mentioning that out of the document Mr. Salinas provided that speaks about the wrinklage of what would be the liner itself, either pre-epoxy or post-epoxy. 10%, and he mentioned himself, that's an industry standard, and there's quite a few spots in there where it exceeds that.
So is the answer to my question yes or no? Is that the county's metric? I mean, what is smooth to you? I mean, is there a metric associated with that as far as the county is concerned?
As far as smooth, well, wrinklage and smooth are two different things. Wrinklage is a material bunching up.
Yeah.
And smoothness, the coarsest pipe allowed for a sewer line lateral and in the code is a concrete pipe. So if you can imagine what the interior of a concrete pipe is, that's generally speaking what we're trying to achieve when we allowed these pipes to be descaled for future use, such as with a new home on an old lot, or in the case of the liner, something similar to that. So an interior concrete pipe it has some porousness and some roughness, but that is the roughest material allowed by the building codes, plumbing codes.
Okay, yeah, so it sounds to me to be kind of subjective, but let's face it, we're looking at photographs, right? So one other question, a real quick question here. I think you mentioned in your opening statement that the video shows the gravity flow is or was impeded, but I don't see that in any of the video captures. I don't see any blockage at all. I don't see anything backed up. Am I missing something or what?
I would agree that in video you're looking at, that would be an accurate statement, but I cannot speak to whether or not that line was pressure jetted, cleaned out, preemptively cleaned before it was submitted. I know in a previous appeal, there was a different situation described, and I don't want to go back to that, but anywhere you have any kind of an obstruction, you will have something grab a hold of it throughout the course of the sewer line.
Okay, I'm finished. Thank you very much, Mr. Cantor.
Okay, Darren Shoemate, do you have any questions for the county?
Yes, I have one. You quoted a code section, and I think it was a residential code plumbing section, and I can't remember what the number was. But the gist of it, as I was taking my notes, was that the requirement of the pipe is that it does not have ledges or obstructions, et cetera, that would impede the flow. And wouldn't it be considered, at least anecdotally, that there have been no problems with this sewer, that has been achieved, that code requirement has been achieved?
For the moment, I would agree with that statement, but as we all know, if that condition were to remain consistent throughout the life of the pipe, they would have never had to reline this pipe to begin with.
Right, and I guess the point of a retort that I would have to that is that relining the pipe will have taken care of those issues, and there's no longer issues with that pipe backing up.
Again, at the moment, right now, as it looks, it doesn't look like it's backing up, but that's the lifespan of this product is, I assume, at least 20 years if they're going to warrant it that long. So it needs to be installed as correctly as possible during the installation process, and we don't feel at this time that this one has.
Okay.
We have approved other installations that Freedom Plumber has done, such as 12500 Thomas Young Court and 436 Park Street. So there is precedent where these liners have been installed and approved by the county, but this one in particular, we still have some concerns about.
Okay, thank you.
Rob Fisher, any questions for the county?
Yes, sir. Mr. Cantor, you just answered one of my questions, or partially, and that is, have you approved other systems that Mr. Salinas has installed? And so it sounds like the answer is yes.
Yes.
Have you approved other installations of other systems throughout the county?
There may have been one or two others. This is a relatively new process with the county that, Fairfax County's even been instrumental in adopting or presenting, I guess, for code adoption, this process, because it wasn't currently approved by the code. So we're in support of the product. We just want to make sure it's being installed correctly for the longevity of the pipe for the owner or for the property. We have approved some, yes.
Okay, can I ask you, I'm assuming you have the same presentation that we do.
Yes.
Could you take a look at a couple of these pictures and answer some specific questions for me?
I will.
Like page 9 to start with?
I will do my best.
Yeah.
Page
So-
9, you're on.
It says bump at the end of the liner.
Okay.
So that would be a failure. Is that right?
Yes. Yes, no doubt.
But then when we go to page 10, there's a picture dated 11/20 and a picture dated 12/01.
Mm-hmm.
And they're at two different intervals, right? One's at 42 feet, one's at 28'9".
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything in those photographs that would result in a failure or a disapproval?
I'm trying to get to the right page here. I'm sorry.
No worries.
I had them all brought up, and then one of them disappeared on me. I'm sorry, I'm having an issue pulling that one back up.
Well, you could go to page 11 if that's available. It's pretty similar, although that's an abandoned clean out, so it's sort of moot, but.
It's an abandoned clean out, but it does have the wrinklage per se.
Okay, so is that what we're seeing at the top of the picture there?
Yeah, the top and then proceeding down around the sides there a little bit, yes.
Yeah.
It appears to be.
Okay, and then if you go on to page 12, again, there's two pictures, one dated 11/20 and one dated 12/01. Again, different intervals. And it refers to the fins at the bottom of the turn. That's something that would cause a failure, right?
Yes, sir.
And how about on the bottom photograph at 17'9"?
Again, I'm going off of memory because I don't have that in front of me at the moment. I apologize.
Okay. Okay.
I had it.
All right, I guess I'm just trying to get. I mean, again, I guess we're looking, we're talking about sort of a subjective decision. So I'm just trying to figure out what does and does not qualify as a failure. But
thank you, whoever shared that.
Oh. So again, if you look at page, you have page 10 available there? That's it. No, it's not.
Richard, if you change your view to single page, it'll make it bigger.
Okay, yeah, the package you got, it's a little different than mine. Hang on a second. Let's try this again.
I believe page 10 is 42 feet.
Yeah, that's correct.
Let me try this again. I probably pulled up the wrong one.
I do apologize. I did have this pulled up and I lost it somewhere in the process.
All right, can we see that?
Yes.
Yep.
And is this this is the one at 11/20 and 12/01 at 20'7" and 17'9"? Is that the one that you were looking at, or you want me to find another?
No, that is not the one, but we can make that work.
Okay.
So are those, obviously these are photographs, Mr. Cantor, that are instances of something that caused you to turn the submission down. Is that correct?
That's correct. And if you look at them, these are spaced, 10 days, 12 days apart, something like that. This is the same location in the pipe. The footage differs between where they put the snake into the pipe and where they start to count. So I'm not as concerned, but this is the same location. In the 11/20 picture, you can clearly see the ridges that were there. And in the 12/1, you can still see that ridge just as it's going into the shadow. So the ridges have not gone away. They are lessened, but they have not gone away. And if we're comparing this to the smooth interior of a pipe, even as coarse as a concrete pipe, this is not there yet.
Okay. All right.
There's the
Okay.
obstruction that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, clearly that could cause a buildup and an obstruction in time.
Okay, and again, the photographs below there are post the sanding?
Yeah, that looks like, it looks like where the liner is beginning. You can see the friction fit gasket that I believe is required by the manufacturer and where they've sanded that one out. That is much better than what it was.
Okay. All right. Okay, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Rob. Mike Grinnell, any questions?
Yes, James, thank you for your presentation. One thing that jumped out to me when you were talking to George was you had mentioned that the 10% number that we've talked about today is tied to the liner and not the wrinkling. But when I'm looking at page 30, the quote is the maximum wrinkling allowed is 10% of the pipe diameter.
Mhm.
Am I missing something on there? It sounds like wrinkling up to 10% is allowed, but then what I heard you say, and I could be misinterpreting it, is that the 10% only applies to the pipe liner.
So the 10% wrinkling that you're referencing, I can only imagine that it's the product, whether it's pre or post epoxy, they're only permitted to have 10%. So if you were to look back at the photographs we just looked at, in particular the one that had the ridges in it, if you were to divide that diameter into sections of 10, one section of that would be 10%, and that's clearly far exceeding 10%.
And are you measuring from the original pipe or the liner?
It would be the liner or the finished product.
Okay, because that's where I have some confusion, because the way this is written in the manufacturer's spec makes it sound like it's only the wrinkling being measured from the liner itself.
Well, again, though,
This is page, if you want to see it, it's page 30, item 2, under testing.
well, I'm trying to understand the question because it's.
So right now we've got,
If the
it sounds like,
wrinkle.
it sounds like wrinkling is allowed up to 10% of the pipe diameter,
Okay.
not independent of the sleeve itself, the way
Well,
this spec is written.
I'm not sure I follow your question, sir.
Okay.
Because if the material or the liner or the finished product, however you want to look at it, it's 10% of the diameter. The diameter is the length around the pipe. So it's not the area, it's the diameter. So if you were to measure, you were to cut that, slice that thing down the middle and lay it out, 10% is only going to be a small portion of that liner.
All right, I think we have a disconnect, so I have no further questions.
Amato, any questions?
Yeah, I do. The material that's included in this submittal, the criteria that we're looking at by the manufacturer is not the manufacturer that was used for this pipe. This is a different manufacturer. So there may be differences between the two manufacturers. Obviously, the fact that the product is thinner may have some other implications, which I don't know. But you said you tried to get a hold of the L&K manufacturer and you were not able to get any response.
That's correct. I called them directly. I spoke to an individual. I don't have my note. I believe his name was Richard. I could be wrong on that name though. But I spoke to him. I asked him. I gave him my email address. I asked them to send me any kind of manufacturer installation instructions, specifications, training videos, anything they had. And I followed that up the following Monday with an email to him, and I never received any response from them whatsoever.
Okay. All right. Number two is the other two projects that were approved by Mr. Salinas work. As far as you know, did they use the L&K product also?
It's my understanding that is the product that they use, yes.
Okay. And has that, and in a previous discussion, you were talking about a certification that was issued to the homeowner by a third party.
That is in LNK's documentation as a requirement.
Have you seen that? You haven't seen that for this project. Have you seen that for other projects that were approved?
I have not, and again, that's recommended or required to be given to the owner. So we don't necessarily require that, although we may start asking for a copy.
Okay, that might make sense.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all my questions for Mr. Cantor. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to now let the appellant and then the county present any final remarks, comments. I'll call it rebuttal, if you will. This is a chance for any final statements that you have, given what you've heard so far and the questions from the board. So, Mr. Salinas, I'll turn the floor over to you and any of your guests that would like to say anything.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also want to thank Mr. Cantor for his time today. Even though we're in this situation, I do thoroughly enjoy working with him and the LDS staff, even though we have disagreements on what we're looking at. Mr. Cantor does mention that these chads, I think he called them fuzzies. You can say that's a pretty accurate visual description of what's going on. Would create increased friction or inside the sewer diameter of the pipe. He also stated that the diameter itself of the pipe was technically a frictional surface that causes friction in the flow. Then that being said, quite technically, the allowance of this lateral liner also creates friction. So anything that goes inside of this pipe is a frictional matter, becomes an issue. So I understand his point of view, but we're picking and choosing what is considered a frictional issue within the installation of a sewer. The lateral liner, depending on manufacturer, is going to have a different thickness, a different type of application, and a different type of material. So furthermore, it's going to look different from liner to liner to liner. Mr. Cantor mentioned that he has this pipe in his office that has a liner installed, and that's kind of similar to what he's looking for. But again, as mentioned before, it is a controlled setting liner installation. I have those. Anybody who's ever entertained the idea of lining has those as well. When it comes to requesting the certification of these liners, or even requesting additional information or verbiage as pertaining to LMK Technologies, I was not aware that Mr. Cantor had reached out to LMK. All he had to do was tell me, and I would be more than happy to jump through all the hoops necessary to get him all the information he needed. I have provided that information on a separate case for LMK lateral lining installation procedures, and nothing came out of that delivery to the video reviewer, who I also objected to their findings. I provided that information and nothing came out of it. When it came to the escalation of the video inspections, I understand his point of view as to the quality of the video makes a difference in their decisions. I get that. All 5 of the videos were done from the beginning of the install to the end of the install, and all of them showed the same thing: a sewer with the same defects that they noted after the 3rd or 4th failure inspection, but were never mentioned before. Furthermore, that goes to show me and to understand that the video reviewers either A, are not paying attention to the entire inspection, they're just looking for the first item that they want that requires a failure, or they don't necessarily, or we're not getting the same inspector every time, which that is a possibility. There was something else, but it fazed me. But they're not thoroughly trained on what to be looking for on these inspections. It doesn't seem like it, simply because the standards for the inspection passing procedure shift all the time. The first failure was due to address, nothing else, but it was an entire video. The second failure was due to a bump, nothing else. And I asked several times, is it the bump at the end of the liner or at a different location? They said end of liner. The third failure was now 9 additional issues that were not brought up in prior failures. bumps, blemishes, you name it. Bumps were noted and taken care of. Some blemishes in the form of chads remained until eventually I no longer felt safe to continue sanding these liners. Now, there's a concern whether these sewers have been sanitized prior to the video inspections. Mrs. Avis can attest, if you guys ask her, whether there was a hydrojetter on property power washing these sewer lines before the inspections. I'll advise you right now, no. When it comes to the 10% claim that these wrinkles are over 10% of the pipe diameter, that is again subjective. These bumps, no matter what size they are, including pre-bump sanding down, you will note that there's no or minimal standing water standing in that pipe, even before it was sanded down. You could say that the original bumps were 10% for sure. It's definitely noted that that is a bump. I mean, anybody can see that on the first page with the first image that states bump at the end of the liner. But once sanded down, even with chads or blemishes, those do not constitute a 10%. It's impossible for those blemishes, which are the size of a fingernail or smaller, to constitute 10% of the pipe diameter. And then there was noted the bump at the abandoned cleanout. Please note that the blemishes are on the top of the pipe and on the side walls, well above the flow corridor of the sewer line. But if you look at that image, which is dated 12/1/2020, and look at the bottom of that pipe, that's even smooth as PVC. I'm not sure why that would constitute a failure. So these decisions are subjective based on whatever the video reviewers, their understanding of what is to be constituted as a pass inspection. Now, 436 Park Street, which Mr. Cantor stated that had passed inspection and it was an L&K Technologies. That is unfortunately incorrect. 436 Park Street is a pipe burst, which is a whole different technology for a sewer replacement, not a rehabilitation, not a CIPP, not a renewal. It is a complete replacement, complete different technology with a manufacturer called Hammerhead Technologies. So that statement is incorrect. I did not hear the other address that Mr. Cantor referenced to, but 436 Park Street was a pipe burst. And noted on that particular inspection was also another issue that we happened to have with the video reviewers, because they had failed it originally, stating that the pipe had collapsed. And they wouldn't back down on the collapse statement, even though I stated that that was a tree leaf, what they were looking at, because the camera inspection was done in the fall. And it was only after I sent an email to Mr. Cantor that the tree leaf was finally identified as a leaf, and the inspection finally passed. This cast iron pipe, installed in '66, unlike many cast iron pipes in the rest of the county of Fairfax, and many of the areas of county of Fairfax, it actually has a screaming grade. It has a 45-degree drop, as you can see in the video, and before it even connects to the public sewer line. So furthermore, this pipe isn't just going downhill. There are areas that it's screaming downhill. So it has no issues with standing water, flat spots, or anything that would cause a possibility of a backup inside the sewer line. And clearly the historic performance of this liner so far, that being over a year with no issues whatsoever. And this liner has been inspected no less than 5 different times throughout the entire past year. No noted issues in that sewer besides any of the bumps that were noted by the county reviewer. This liner should stand as is and continue to serving the homeowner as is as well. I strongly recommend we do not continue sanding down and compromising the structure of this liner. And that's my response.
Thank you. Okay, questions of Mr. Salinas? George?
Yeah, this is George. I don't have any questions.
Darren?
Actually, he brought up a question that I wanted to ask, and he already answered it. And I was going to ask him if he knew what the slope was, so that was quite helpful. I have nothing else.
Okay. Rob Fisher?
Rob, you're on mute.
Yeah, no additional questions.
Mike Grinnell
I'm good. No, thank you.
and Amato.
Yeah, I do have questions. Thank you, Mr. Salinas, you clarified one of the questions I was going to ask, but it kind of led me to a different question. So let me start there. Have there been any jobs that you've done using this technology that have been approved in the county?
At this time, I don't have any record. I've installed limited liners in Fairfax County, and all of them are in dispute right now.
Okay,
I have installed them all over the place and no issues there, but Fairfax has given me disputes.
okay, thank you. Number two is the installation criteria that was included in the package, which was not the L&K criteria. I'm assuming L&K has their own criteria similar to what was submitted in the package?
Yes, sir. And if you need that, I can provide that.
All right. Okay. Number two is, does the third party, which I don't know whether I've heard alleged that that L&K has a requirement that there'd be a third party certification relative to the installation. Is that, to your knowledge, is that true? And has that been provided to the homeowners that you've done work for?
That is a recommendation, but not a requirement.
Okay.
Okay, in order to assert the quality of their product.
Okay. All right. And the last one is, does the manufacturer, when you do the job and you do your video, does the manufacturer review that, and do they provide an opinion as to the level of success of what's been done? Is that typical or not?
No, sir. Review by the manufacturer, since it is not required after every installation, it is not sent out to them. No, sir.
Okay. Okay, so the warranty that they issue is then totally dependent on you doing the job correctly, since they don't review the actual installation in any way, shape, or form.
That is correct. And like any proof of claim, providing evidence that the manufacturer's product failed. Okay.
Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Okay, this is Dave Conover. I have one. Mr. Salinas, if there's photos that were taken, or at least I understand that you said that the job was initially completed in January of 2020 and has been in use since then. And there were photos or videos taken in December of 2020 that have been the subject of our, I'll say, review. So is it correct to say that the system has been in place for 11 months and has been serving the waste from this particular property, and that the videos or pictures we looked at from December of 2020 were indicative of 11 months of use and discharge of effluent over that period of time, and what we saw as the result of 11 months of use?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, that is a correct statement. At the time of inspection, it had gone through 11 months worth of utilization, going on 13 now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to let the county provide any final remarks, rebuttal, anything they want to add. Mr. Cantor?
Thank you. This is James Cantor. First of all, I want to stand corrected on that pipe burst at 436. I did a quick look at addresses done by a Freedom Plumber that had received a past inspection. So I stand corrected on that address. The other address was 12500 Thomas Young Court. So that would have been the liner that had been installed that has received a past inspection. If this job were initially installed I hate to use the word corrected, but I'll use the word correctly, then there would have never been any video submitted that would have shown us all of the defects that we felt it for subsequently. In the code modification process and approval, there is a clear list of items that are to be followed, one of which is showing the address of the property. So if we can't verify the address, I can't verify that that liner is installed at that location, which is why that requirement is there. Again, I'm reverting back to the code. The code calls for a clear interior, smooth interior of the pipe. I'm looking at the document from L&K that was submitted with the code modification request. Item number 4.10, post-inspection, says a second CCTV inspection is performed, documented liner placement and condition. The owner shall receive a video recording and a written report certified by NASSCO LACP. Those are the capitalized letters of that certification. Documented inspection of the CIPP. So Mr. Salinas' statement that is a recommendation, I would argue that would be a requirement of this manufacturer for this material. If that documentation was obtained by a third party certified to do this inspection, we would most likely approve this liner, but I don't believe that this is being done in these cases. So we have to, again, I agree that this is subjective, but we're looking after the pipe and the homeowner and the property and trying to do our best job possible. When we review these videos, I have 3 supervisors that do these reviews. Oftentimes when there's a question, they will bring in a second supervisor or myself to look at them so that we can kind of weigh in on whether or not this is something we need to be concerned about or something we can allow to pass. So there are different reviewers that look at these. We've done well over 2,000 video inspections of sewer lines. Unfortunately, fortunately, whichever way you want to look at it, we see few CIPPs, and we're doing the best we can to ensure that these are being installed correctly based on the plumbing codes and based on the manufactured installations. And again, we don't feel that we've met the standard for this liner at this time. I would liken this to if you're driving your car and you get a flat tire and you take it to the shop and they put on another tire that doesn't quite have all the tread and etc. It's better than it was, but it still doesn't meet the standard that you would expect. And that's kind of what we're concerned about here. This is it's better than it was. We don't deny that, but it doesn't meet the standard of the plumbing code. And that's my that's the end of my statement.
Thank you. Mr. Salinas, I see that you have your hand up. If there's, well, if I'll hear you, but I'm going to feel compelled then to give the county a chance to speak. If you have something to say, Mr. Salinas.
Yes, it's real quick. 12,500 Thomas Young Court. Unfortunately, it too is not a lateral liner. 12,500 Thomas Young Court, which was the other address mentioned by Mr. Cantor, that is a sewer, conventional excavation sewer repair due to improper installation from back in the original install of the house. But that address is not a lateral liner. That's all I needed to say.
Thank you. Mr. Cantor, further comments?
Again, I quickly looked at a list of Freedom Plumber and approved inspections. I stand corrected.
Okay. At this point, I'm going to close the public hearing phase of this hearing, and I'm going to go to the board. And what I'm going to ask for is a motion and a second on the appeal so that we can then, as a board, discuss it. And I'll remind in that discussion, if a new issue comes up that has not been gone over in the public testimony, the motion will still be on the floor, but I'll open the floor back up for both the appellant and the appellee to respond. So is there a motion on the appeal to either approve the appeal or deny the appeal?
Hey, Dave, quick question. Do we
Yes.
also have the option to open the floor for discussion?
We should have a motion on the floor first. My experience with codes and standards development is you have to have a motion and a second and something on the floor to discuss and debate and et cetera. So that's the way we've done it since I've been on the board, and I think that's an appropriate way to go. So.
Okay, David, I'll make a motion to support the appellant.
Okay, to approve the appeal.
Yes.
Is there a second to that?
Second, Mike Grinnell.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the appeal. George and or Mike, why don't you provide a reason for that or a basis for your motion and second? And that will at least provide other members of the board and those in attendance a background of the rationale, and then that can be, we can discuss that. If folks on the board disagree or agree, they'll have something to discuss. George or Mike?
Yeah, I'll go first. First of all, this isn't the typical code issue where the county says it has to be 2 inches and it's 1.5 inches. It's not cut and dried like that. I understand that. So it seems very subjective, especially when it gets down to, is it quite smooth enough or not quite smooth enough? I just don't think the county is standing on really firm ground when we're looking at video captures where it's not really clear that there's a problem. So Mr. Cantor, I don't know what Mr. Cantor meant when he said it didn't meet standards, but I don't know what standard it's supposed to mean at this point. The second thing I noticed is nobody ever claimed that there was a long history of failures for this kind of pipelining. If it wasn't a good technique, I think the county would have outlawed it by now, or forbidden it by now. So that's why I'm supporting the appellant.
Okay, Mike, do you have anything to add since you seconded?
I'll save mine for once we open it up to discussion, because I'm going to derail the whole thing because of some information we're missing.
Okay. So I'm going to open it up for discussion. At this point, board members have at it, and hopefully, nobody's going to talk over anybody. I won't moderate other than, I'm not going to call on names.
So I'll go ahead and start just because I passed so I could jump in on this one. So I feel like we're missing a big piece of information here. Like right now, when you go to page 30, you're looking at, the specifications and requirements for the wrong pipe. That's the easy liner, but it's good to have it in there just to understand what's there. And one of the big things that you'll see under testing and visual inspection, like that's the meat of this one company that's not the one that we're reviewing, but it says basically you need that CCTV put in place there, to run that survey. But then the big thing that just jumps out and blaring thing is at the bottom of part 2, where it says the maximum wrinkling allowed is 10% of the pipe diameter. So we're not talking about liner when I read that, but we're talking about the actual wrinkling. And this is where the piece I'm missing that I need is somebody from the manufacturer to weigh in on this. Because if this manufacturer says, yes, I have reviewed it, yes, this is, per our specifications and good, then we're in a situation where we've got a 20-year manufacturer warranty for a homeowner, and everything kind of checks the boxes, and if they keep sanding this thing down further and further, this thing will ultimately fail. So, that's kind of the piece that I'm missing, is that actually getting that manufacturer to weigh in with just something. Because if I have that piece, then I can definitely weigh one way or the other. So I think ultimately this could be headed similar to our other one, where we table it, get the rest of the information, and then go from there. That's all I have.
This is Darren Shoemate. So my takeaway is, if the intent of the code, and Mr. Cantor brought this up, if the intent of the code is to provide an installation that does not impede flow, and we have a pipe with a very good grade, the slope, a very good slope, and we have over a year of successful installation, that means to me that it is satisfied that requirement in the code. So I mean that's kind of where I come from in this thing, is that if it's working, to get concerned about a very subjective, I don't want to say very, that's not fair, to get into a subjective judgment on whether it's smooth or not smooth, I think kind of misses the point. If it's working, it seems to me that it has satisfied the code.
All right.
Thank you. Rob, well, I've got Rob and Amato, so I
had his hand up before me, so go ahead, Rob, please.
Okay, thank you. So I have a couple of concerns. Sort of like Armando brought up with this idea of the manufacturer, there are lots of systems out there, be they flat roofing systems or James Hardie siding systems, where the warranty from the manufacturer to the homeowner is 100% contingent on that manufacturer having done a pre or during or post inspection. Without that, my fear is that, and based on what Mr. Cantor read to us, that it shall be looked at by the manufacturer, I have concerns as to whether or not this homeowner has a warranty, and that L&K, if they didn't have the opportunity, if they didn't participate before, during, or after this installation, that there is no warranty. And I guess the other issue I have, and perhaps I should have brought this up earlier, but there's a letter in here on page 20 that it is entitled Mr. Grace's reply to my concerns about continued demands for service of the liner. But it appears to me like it was actually signed by Jim Cantor. But in either case, it refers to the fact that I've been reviewing your situations regarding the multiple installations where the process has not been followed, work has been performed, materials have been installed without proper approvals, permits, or inspections, all in violation of USBC and DPOR regulations. In 2 instances, the code modification process appears to have been initiated and then not followed through while work continued illegally. Perhaps if your company would follow the procedures in place and receive proper approvals prior to work commencement, we would not be in the situation that we are now. Now, that hasn't been, I mean, there is certainly this subjective side of this, but if the permit process and the warranty process wasn't followed, then I think we have a different issue. And in terms of this, with respect to this idea that this is subjective, I submit sewers all the time. Every time we do a demolition, I have to submit a video of the sewer to the county, and it gets interpreted as either approved or not approved. And I will say that when I go back and look at them, generally there is some consistency. When your job is to review these, and I know the county reviews them all the time, they do develop a skill set for reviewing these things. So, I mean, I see what they're pointing to here with these obstructions, and not knowing whether they're these hanging chads or soft or hard, I have concerns that this product will do what it's supposed to do. The fact that it's not leaking today, or that there's not a problem today, doesn't mean it was installed properly. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Amato?
Yeah, I'd like to just follow up on what Rob and what Mike said. We have an installation here based on a manufacturer's criteria, and we don't have that manufacturer's criteria for us to evaluate any of these comments. We have another manufacturer's criteria, which may or may not be similar. So I don't think we have the tools. I don't think we've been provided the tools that we need in order to make this evaluation. The third party inspection, and that goes along potentially with what's in the criteria by the manufacturer that in fact has been used here. And I second Rob's concern. In all my years, anytime you have a manufacturer that I'm aware of, you have a manufacturer's warranty, there are responsibilities that the installer has to provide from the manufacturer in order to validate the warranty. And I'm not sure whether this has it or not, because we don't have the information to be able to review it. So that's one. And I will second Rob's question relative to Darren's comment about the fact that it's working for a year. It's okay. This is only plumbing, but I can take this to steel, structural steel. I can take it to mechanical systems. If it's working for a year, it's good. Forget about it. It's going to work for the next 20. And that's not true. We all well know that that's not true. So the fact that it's working is wonderful, but that doesn't mean it's done. It was done correctly. It just means it's working. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay. So every board member has spoken on the motion. I believe in this discussion, I don't want to say a new issue came up, but the issue of manufacturer's criteria and warranty came up a couple of times, and I don't recall hearing enough input from the appellant and appellee on that issue. So I'm going to take the prerogative, since this is an important issue, to open the floor back up for the appellant and the appellee to talk to only this issue of the manufacturer's criteria. Do we have the correct criteria, specs, etc., right now from this specific manufacturer of the product that was installed in this installation? Do we have it, and how does it relate to warranty, etc.? So on that issue, Mr. Salinas, would you like to respond? And then I'll give the county similar opportunity. So we can get more information, and I think hopefully the board can then use that to make an informed decision on their vote.
Yes, so the manufacturer's criteria of my product is not within your package. That's not without to say that I can provide that manufacturer criteria to you for review if this case gets tabled for a separate date in order to address any concerns that this board may have. If you're looking for a third-party certification, and if Fairfax County would like to make that a requirement in order to accept this liner as is, I can provide a letter with LMK's signed and approval of this liner. If that's what you need, if that's what makes you more comfortable, I'll make it happen. Tell me what you want, reference to the manufacturer, and I will provide it.
Thank you, Mr. Salinas. Mr. Cantor?
Yeah, the LMK documents that I'm looking at is what was submitted when they first requested the code modification approval. If they were to provide a third-party certification, specifically of what this document calls for, we would definitely entertain that third-party certification as approvable. And it is very specific as to the NASSCO LACP documented inspection of the CIPP. And I did look at that website, and there's a list of certified inspectors that they have. So We would entertain that. We didn't previously request it because it says it shall be provided to the owner. But in hindsight, I think a copy of that may be a wise decision to add into the criteria for these products.
Okay, thank you. So back to the board. We have a couple of options here. One is to vote on the motion and see what happens, but it sounds like there is a potential solution and some additional information forthcoming. So one scenario would be for the person that made the motion and the person that seconded the motion to withdraw those motions so that it leaves the floor clean, so to speak, and then a motion to table at second and a vote to allow time to pursue this third-party certification and for Mr. Salinas to do that and get that to the county. In my opinion, that's a cleaner way to do it than leaving the motion to approve the appeal on the floor and then tabling that motion. So at this point, I'll see if George and Mike want to withdraw their motion, and then we'll see what happens. If they do, then I'll ask for a substitute motion, which I think is to table.
Okay, David, let me see if I understand this correctly. The county says the pipe is not smooth enough. But we're saying now that if the manufacturer comes back and says it's smooth enough, then the county is going to change their mind? Is that basically what we're saying?
I'm interpreting this, and again, we can open this back up and let the appellant and the county respond, but I'm interpreting this as the county can defer to an approved agency, which happens every day in the electrical world when they defer to Underwriters Laboratory or some other third party. So what I've heard is that if Mr. Salinas has an approved third party come out and validate that the in situ installation of this liner meets appropriate standards, and then they would essentially certify it. And what I heard was the county would accept that certification. I'm going to open this back up to the appellant and the county to make sure that I've correctly answered your question.
Okay, but the county's already made a call, and I've made a motion.
Okay, so your motion
to support the plumber, the contractor.
Okay, Mike. And you're leaving that. And Mike,
if he is leaving it, my opinion no longer matters because it would take, I believe, both of us to take it away for this to go forward. I'm really just trying to get us to table it so we get the missing data in the law. That's my end game.
Okay, so you can ask to make a motion to table. I'm trying to follow Robert's Rules of Order and do it in my head.
Okay, I'm not an expert in Robert's Rules of Order, but if there was a motion then a second,
we've got to go to the motion.
You could rescind the second, and then the motion, if it doesn't get another second, would die.
Thank you. I will rescind the second of the motion.
Okay. So is there a second? George still has a motion on the floor. The second has been withdrawn based on the subsequent discussion. Is there another second for the motion? Okay, not hearing a second, that motion I think dies. And at this point, I'd ask for a substitute motion.
I make a motion to table based on getting the information specifically called out on page 7. The relining installation shall be performed in accordance with the manufacturer's installations, instructions, and all applicable reference standards.
And does that include getting a third-party certification?
In this case, if that third-party certification gets us there, then yes.
Is there a second to the tabling?
I just want to, can I clarify what the motion?
Yes, Amato.
Okay, so Mike, you're asking for,
Confirmation that the manufacturing,
which would be
installation.
us, which would be receiving the manufacturer's criteria and requirements for it, like we had for the previous one, getting the L and K material submitted to us, which, and then any attached requirements, i.e. the third-party inspection, that would be part of the overall.
Correct. Third-party inspection, a letter from the manufacturer saying we have reviewed the video and take no issue with it, anything along those lines. You know, just to say that we are good, we've installed it per the installation instructions.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, is there a second to the motion to table?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further discussion on this? And I'm assuming this will all occur, and the appellant will get this information, and if that refers to a third-party certification, get that, submit it to the county. And I guess it's possible that in the ensuing couple or 3 weeks, this could result in the county approving this installation, and as a result, the appeal being withdrawn. So with that, we have a motion and a second. I'm going to do a roll call. George Page, your vote to table?
Let me make sure I'm on. No, I vote no.
Okay. Darren?
I'll vote yes.
Yes. Rob Fisher?
I don't want to confuse the issue, but I just want to make sure I understand. Are we saying that we're going to get a third-party certification or a manufacturer certification
Both.
that this was installed properly?
We are going to get something that says from the manufacturer or a third party saying this was installed. We're just looking for confirmation that this thing was installed correctly per the requirement on page 7 of the package that we were given.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's how we remove the subjective. Okay, so the vote is for whether or not we want to table it and secure that. I vote yes.
Okay. Mike?
I like the motion.
Yes. And Amato?
Yes.
Okay. And the chairman is not voting. So thank you very much. I'm sorry this took a while, but it's important. I think the result of this is, and I want to make sure I'm going to, I guess, after we've tabled it, go back to the appellant and the county one more time. It sounds like with the information from page 7, the manufacturer specifications that may subsequently point to a third party or the manufacturer or somebody, it sounds to me like over the next 2 or 3 weeks, if that occurs, it's possible that the county getting that new information could in fact approve this installation, and as a result, the appeal would be withdrawn. Obviously, if the information wasn't forthcoming or wasn't satisfactory, we'd find ourselves in the same position we're in now. But I want to ask the appellant and the county if that sounds, if I've summarized the end result of this correctly. Mr. Salinas?
That's how I understood it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and Mr. Cantor?
Yes, I would agree with that as well.
Great. So we'll leave that up to really, I think, Mr. Salinas, the ball is in your court. And I think the county is, it seems like this is a potential solution. So with this, I'm going to close, before I close the hearing, is there anything that the appellant or the appellee or any of the board members want to make a statement at all? Just give everybody a last chance to, not on the hearing. The hearing's closed. We're done. I guess this is a thank you very much for your time, and we'll wait to see what happens. Can I assume, Richard Grace, that You'll keep us informed as to what Mr. Salinas is pursuing and how that's working with the county?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as long as I get included in any correspondences, I can keep you up to date.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, with that, I'll close the hearing and thank everybody for their time and attention.
And I thank you all as well.
Thank
Okay,
you.
have a good day. Take
Good
care.
job on getting all the information out, guys, both Ricky and Richard and Carla. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.